Jesus Freak here, and I was watching someone's YouTube video about the longer ending of Mark, and it reminded me that I'd read somewhere that the United Bible Society's New Testament text was apparently, to a vast degree, edited by people who weren't exactly what we'd call devout Christians. And that other texts, like the Tyndale House text, the Robinson Pierpont text, the Hodges Farstad text, and of course later editions of the Textus Receptus, did come from devout Christians. Now, for what they may fail in all agreeing in every respect, most of these are going to agree on almost every respect, and the outlier is going to be Tyndale House, because it does rely somewhat on the older manuscripts. But from what I understand, the Tyndale House text is more in agreement with the Byzantine type than the United Bible Society's / Nestle-Aland text. And even the Nestle-Aland text has been moving more away from the Westcott-Hort types. Now, the thing is, that a lot of these older manuscripts were basically, shoved in jars and stashed in a dry place. Of course, nothing's going to happen to them. Where, if they're actually used and they're in a more, less arid climate, they're going to wear out. And it's one big reason why you're going to have more of the Byzantine type manuscripts. The thing is, and I'm not sure if it's been proven, but I believe this to be true, the so-called Alexandrian type manuscripts compared to each other are extremely erratic, suggesting that rather than being a variant text type, they're just messed up, corrupt copies. Which means rather than being, more ideal to use as the basis for a reconstructed text, they're actually less ideal and should pretty much be ignored as outliers. When you take out the outliers, my understanding is even with the outliers, you got about 95% agreement. If you take out the outliers, it's probably going to be even more. This means, Sinaiticus is useless, Vaticanus is probably useless, Alexandrinus is probably only useful for the Gospels. And lo and behold, you're going to find a text that pretty much agrees with the Textus Receptus in places where the Textus Receptus wasn't influenced by the Latin Vulgate. That's another issue, because the Vulgate comes from a third text type. This is beyond, of course, potential issues about where Sinaiticus comes from. The whole thing about it was literally being used for, I guess, tinder at a monastery, which apparently was under an order of protection from Muhammad himself. Gee, what would Muhammad want in a Christian monastery? But, like I said, that's kind of beyond the point. And if you're gonna go and, reject the outliers, you're gonna find in general that the manuscripts are surprisingly in agreement about stuff that the critical tests and texts is casting doubt on. Now, why would anyone want to cast doubt on the text of the Bible? Oh, I can see one reason. They want to destroy our faith. Well, who'd want to destroy our faith? Well, who else, unless, they're being backed by the devil? Let's face it. You get rid of those outliers and you look at the New Testament text with Christian eyes, not with secular atheistic eyes. Atheistic, you know what I think about atheism. It's not atheism, it's misotheism. But that, again, is another point. You're going to find that, Maurice Robinson's spiel about the Byzantine text form is at least generally correct. And the Textus Receptus, for whatever flaws it has, and I do believe there are some issues, for example, there's a lot of corruption in Revelation because the limited material Erasmus had to work with. You're going to come up with something really close to the Textus Receptus. And if you translate that text, again, with Christian eyes and not secular eyes, you're going to find out that for whatever flaws it has, and of course it does have flaws because it's the work of humans. It's not, God didn't literally come down into the chambers where they were working on the translation and say, I'm going to give you this word by word and letter by letter, like Peter Ruckman seems to say. But they did, for the most part, an admirable attempt at making an honest translation of an honest edition of the text, to a point that I don't think any more recent translation has achieved. Some older ones achieved it. And maybe the New King James comes close. And there are other translations that try to be honest with the text, but they start from the faulty premise of the Nestle-Aland text. I've shown I did my own translation a few years ago. I started a little over 10 years ago, and took about 5 years to do it. And it basically reaffirmed. I was trying to come up with a substitute for the King James, and it backfired hard on me. I think that's saying something. For what I actually have preferences for other translations, I do rely mostly on the King James. And it's probably the safest bet, at least in the English speaking world. Jesus freak out.